Well, welcome everybody to another episode of Video Mojo. I am delighted to welcome Kyle Shannon. Kyle, how are you today?
I am doing awesome. Really, really good to be here. I'm excited to have our conversation.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. And we're also going to obviously be going into AI, which is one of Kyle's sweet spots. But as you can see behind him with the auto magic video, he also is from Storyvine. He also has just published an essay in an anthology about AI. What's that called? The AI Futures, an anthology. That's a book available on Kindle. And he's also the founder of a community that I've started playing with called AI Salon. And he's super active on TikTok. So we're going to be talking about TikTok Live and other things TikTok. He's known as the AI Learning Lab. Anything else important that I left out, Kyle?
I think that's it. I think that's enough.
All right. Well, one of the things that I really resonated with when I read your essay in AI Futures and Anthology was that we have a lot in common around having been there at the beginning of the web, having, for me, especially the beginning of digital video, and now the beginning of AI and the AI revolution. And, you made the point, and I think it's an interesting data point, that it took the web 6 years to reach 100 million users. It took ChatGPT 6 weeks. What is going on?
6 weeks.
I know.
Well, so I mean, what's fascinating about the 100 million people in 6 weeks with ChatGPT is that not even OpenAI thought that what they had built was a big deal, right? GPT-3 had been out. It was announced in 2020, and it had been out for a year and a half, and developers were using it, and they were making things like Jasper and Copy AI, and there were services being built on top of it. And I assume it was related to Microsoft investing $1 billion in them. And I guess they just thought, well, we probably should have something kind of public facing to show what this thing is. And so as the story goes, the team that built ChatGPT the night before they launched it went out for drinks, and they said, well, maybe we'll get, a couple of shares and reposts and maybe 5,000 comments or something like that. 5 days later, they had 1 million users. And 6 weeks later, they had 100 million users. And so what it says to me is that when you look at ChatGPT, it's got the simplicity of Google, right? It's just an input box.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fairly sparse interface. And yet when you interact with it, you put in kind of this minimal amount of input and you get back kind of this dramatic amount of response. And it's just capable on a different level. And it's not just giving you information, it's actually generating GPT. The G in GPT stands for generative, right? So it's actually generating a response. And I think there's something about that I don't know. I suppose it caught people off guard enough that they said to all of their friends, hey, you should check this out. Because there's no way to get from 0 to 100 million users in 6 weeks without sort of massive word of mouth happening. And that just naturally happens because people got excited about what they were experiencing.
Yeah, but I still think that doesn't capture the degree of the tsunami that we're dealing with. And you and I have been talking about it. Maybe we'll get into it, maybe we won't. I'm definitely going to make videos. That just in the last week, you turned me on to ideogram.ai,
Yep.
which I've been playing in Midjourney. I've been playing with Dolly. That thing is not only easier to use than any of those, but more powerful. And I mean, I really love it. And it's remarkable what you can do with it. And also, last night I was looking at the Suno.ai, Suno.ai music creator, and they just came out with
the
version
song creator.
3. Yeah, it's a song creator, folks.
Yeah.
I wrote in I won't even use the language, but I have a golf buddy. I just wrote in 2 golf buddies who call themselves by this nickname. And in 30 seconds, literally, not an exaggeration, I had lyrics written and vocal, a really good vocal of those lyrics and a complete music composition. So this is the worst AI we're ever going to have, and it's moved this far in 14 months. And most people are afraid of it. Very few people have really dived into what the power is. So again, I'm going to ask you the same question. What is going on, Kyle? This is too mind-blowing.
Yeah, so it's the foundation of this stuff is in 2017, Google invents this thing called the transformer. And what the transformer allows is for these machine learning models to be trained on massive data sets. And you can throw sort of massive compute power at them. And it's kind of like the more data you give them and the more compute power you give them, the better they get. And what's wild is it doesn't matter what kind of data you throw at them. So you can throw words at them, you can train it on images, you can train it, right? You can train it on all sorts, on medical information, right? Legal document. ChatGPT was trained on as much of the public internet as, OpenAI could get their hands on over the past 4 or 5 years. So it's a very general model, but all of the things that we're playing with now are all derivatives of this technology that was created in 2017. So even though it seems like this stuff has sort of showed up overnight, there's been, 7 years of development that all of a sudden is sort of coming online. And combined with the fact that when ChatGPT did get to 100 million users that quickly, everyone, every developer, every investor, every technology company, all focused their attention on AI. So what we're experiencing right now is the tail end of an intense year of investment into this stuff. So it's what I'm assuming is about to happen is we're just seeing the very beginning of this deluge of incredible technologies that are going to roll out over 2024. Because, for the people that said, this ChatGPT thing is way bigger than we thought it would be, let's start investing heavy. We're just now starting to see the results of that. And that's going to keep rolling for the next 2 or 3 or 5 years.
Right. So that's the technology side of it. And thank you for that clarity. And you and I are big fans, I know, of the human side of it.
Yeah.
And
it's the bigger side, I think.
It is. And without the human input and the creative direction, you and I both have history as being creative directors, people don't know where to go with it. And, so one, the fear, and I call it, I talk about the negativity bias, keeps people from diving in. I wrote this subject line for our LinkedIn Live, which was AI plus human plus fun.
Yeah.
Is this explosion. And so, talk to me about the human part. And I think we need to get into that because people, one story that I heard from one of your friends and one of our mutual friends from the AI Salon was she was doing a workshop to business people. And the guy said, if I can't just push a button and get the output I want, I'm not interested.
Right.
And he totally doesn't get it. So go ahead.
So I think there's a couple of things going on right now. You mentioned it before, that these tools are as bad as they're ever going to be. They only get better from here. The negativity bias, there's a couple of things going on that I think are important. One is there's just a cultural societal thing where right now sort of technology is a bit demonized and we've got 50 years of Hollywood movies telling us that the AI is going to kill us, the robots are going to kill us, right? So there's kind of a cultural thing. There's also, I think, a fear that machine learning and AI requires you to be an engineer, requires you to be a mathematician, requires you to have an MIT degree. And I think that was true up until November 30th, 2022, which was the day that ChatGPT launched. ChatGPT did a similar thing for AI and machine learning that the World Wide Web did for the internet. So the internet had been around for decades. And Tim Berners-Lee invents the HTML and the World Wide Web. And all of a sudden, the internet goes from a command line, very technical kind of interface to you can click on things. You can point and click. ChatGPT does something very similar. They took all the complexity of machine learning and having to train models, and they just made it as simple as a Google search, right? So it marks a moment, an inflection point in the history of this technology where it had been around for decades, but now it's essentially been revealed to the rest of us. It is incredibly powerful. When you're interacting with ChatGPT, there's this technical thing that's happening. It's like this really complicated math engine that makes these probability, it's just like a fancy calculator. But the data that it's been trained on is essentially the collective output of humanity that's been put on the public internet for the past 5 decades, right? So when you interact with ChatGPT, it's kind of like you're collaborating with a person. And it really has that kind of feel. And so when I first started playing with these tools, I was like, well, this is about efficiency and this and that. And the more I played with it, the more it felt like I was interacting with a collaborator. And it's also a collaborator that doesn't make fun of you, doesn't judge you if you don't know anything. Seriously, I think this is a big deal.
Yeah,
right?
and doesn't
Like,
complain about doing it over
it
again.
doesn't complain about doing it over again. When I first started using ChatGPT, I would have guilt pangs about the third time I told it to rewrite something, because if I were doing that with a remote employee, I'd be like, at some point, I'd just say, I'm gonna cut my losses here. I'll just finish it, right? I don't want to ask them again. And so there's that going on, and then there's another piece going on, which is this: the tools are powerful enough that what I experience is I get kind of a similar endorphin rush when I'm using AI as I do when I'm playing a video game. That with a minimal amount of input, like on a video game, you just a few little twitches of the fingers and all sorts of stuff happens. It's a very similar sort of experience. Very immediate response. It's an outsized positive response. You put in a little bit of effort and you get back this dramatically cool thing in response. So I think there's an endorphin piece to it. And then the last piece is the tools are changing so quickly. And this is where you said fun. My advice with how to become AI literate is just to play.
100%.
And what I mean by play is play beyond your core knowledge and skill base, right? So I feel like I'm really good with words. I know I'm really not good with pictures. Like, I'm good with design. I got a good design eye, but I can't make stuff, right? Now I can. And I love music, but I'm not a great singer. Well, now I've got Suna. I understand coding, but I have ADD, so I don't have the attention span to actually do any coding, but now I can, right? So all of a sudden, if you start playing with these tools where you used to have a competency in this one area or these two areas, you now have it in 10 or 20. And the tools just keep getting better and better and better. So as you get into it, that idea that rather than AI being a tool, think of it more like it's a humanity amplifier. And we are lucky enough to be able to play with that stuff right now. Right? It is very science fiction, and it's very, I don't know, I find it liberating and inspiring. Like, I'm more creatively alive than I've been since I was a kid.
I just want to sit with that, more creatively alive than when I was a kid. Yeah, you said humanity amplifier. I often say creativity enhancer. And that human piece of it is counterintuitive. I think I really want to lean into that. You talked about the neuroscience of an endorphin hit. I mean, it's just fun. And the experience, for those of you who haven't had it, used to be in Midjourney. Now I'm doing it more in Ideogram, but of working with an image and this magic happen. And the logic, I think most people's logical brain going, well, that was just the AI. You pushed a button and something happened. But there's, when I talk to other people that are presenting, like Leo within the AI Salon, there's an ownership, like that came out of my direction. And I interacted with it, like you said, as a collaborator. That analogy is so big that I don't think most people get that it's like a person. I really want to, I have recommended and will continue to recommend the Pi.ai, PI, which is a personal intelligence, another very big AI company, not a small fry, huge language model. But it really is warm and friendly and supportive and encouraging. So,
and it also got an upgrade yesterday. It went to 3.5 or 2.5, and it is apparently now as good as ChatGPT 4.
Yeah, it's on a par. It's a par with it. Yeah, it's. I mean,
it's
yeah.
great.
Go ahead. There's something. I mean, this fun human enhancement, creativity enhancer part of it is kind of a message that I really want people to get, and so that more people will play, as you said, and have the enjoyment. And then the other piece that I'll put on the table is like, as creative directors, I think that we're both comfortable. Oh, I wanted a little more like that. Oh, there was an idea I forgot. Would you include this idea? And having that iterative back and forth. In one of the sessions that I heard online recently, somebody said, well, how do you know when to stop? And that idea was like, really stopped me in my tracks, because I don't have a problem with that. I see something, it makes me smile, I like it, I'm good. And as a creative director, I do that. But there's people that haven't owned their own creative abilities to know, like, now I got to a result I'm happy with.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're hitting on a bunch of different things. I have a ton of thoughts, so I'll try to sift through a couple of them.
Okay, thanks.
I think there's absolutely a misconception. I think because we're used to what Google does. You put in one prompt in Google and you get back the response, and that's kind of it. Your transaction's done, right? Either you found it or you didn't. You might do another transaction, but that's kind of the transaction. What ends up happening with these AI tools is they get better the more context you give them and the more feedback that you give them. So if you're using ChatGPT, if you just say, write me a business plan, it will write you a business plan, and it will be crappy and generic. But if you say, here's the kind of business I'm starting, and here's the kind of role I want you to play. I want you to play a business consultant, and I want to come up with a marketing plan, and here's what my business does, and here's who my customers are. And you give it all that context, it gets really, really good. And then when it generates stuff, you can act as a creative director or a stakeholder and say, no, I don't like that. Do it like this. Make it more informal. Make it more like this. So you're directing this thing. So it is very much a collaboration rather than a tool where you just say, give me a thing and it gives it to you. I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions.
Absolutely.
One of the other misconceptions is what you hit on around creativity. And this one I think is also counterintuitive. When I first started learning these tools and when I first started, talking to people about it, putting it out in the world that I'm playing with AI, one of the questions that I would get pretty consistently is, well, if these tools are so creative, doesn't that make you less creative? And I find the absolute opposite to be true. Because here's my experience with creativity and AI. In the olden timey days, John, 2022 and earlier, if you and I would have an idea, okay, great. Well, how would we execute that? Well, we might have to go learn some more about the topic, right? Okay, so I'll go to Google and I'll start searching and I'll do this and I'll do that. And then maybe I find out it's good, maybe not. But that's 20 minutes are now gone with me just trying to figure out whether I even want to pursue this idea. And then if it's good, then I'm like, well, maybe I need to learn coding, or maybe I need to learn a different, a tool within Illustrator or something like that. And 2 hours later, I maybe have some articulation of that idea, right? And so I've spent 2 hours of my creative energy just trying to get to a starting point with that idea. With generative AI, you have that idea, and 30 seconds later, there it is. And then you're like, oh, that's not bad, right? What if I put this in a historical context? Boom, now it's in the Wild West. Oh, that's kind of interesting. What might that look like? Let me go over to this image. Oh, there's what it looks like, right? And now that ChatGPT is multimodal, you can go from, creative concept to an image in the same tool, right? And that sophistication is going to get better and better and better. So what I find for myself is one thing I deeply believe, I'm curious if you resonate with this. On any given 24-hour period, I've got some fixed amount of creative energy. Some days it's an hour, some days it's 4 hours, but it's kind of a fixed thing. I can't really push past it. What I'm finding is that if I had 2 hours of creative energy in a day, in the old times, in 2022 and earlier, most of that 2 hours, 90% of that 2 hours of creative energy was spent kind of problem solving, getting that idea out of my head. With AI, I spend 5 minutes getting it out of my head and 2 hours kind of living at a higher creative plane where I'm just sort of executing sort of more and better and staying more creatively inspired. And that for me it feels to me like it's changing my brain, like how my brain's working, because I'm not consistently hitting brick walls. And that to me I find thrilling. I think that's why there's so much energy around this, is that people they just get to stay in this higher creative state longer.
Yeah, and it's really a profound point, I think, actually, what you just said, because when you say AI is changing my brain, for most people, that sets off an alarm. Oh my God, he's being programmed. And I know that what you're talking about, and it does resonate with me, the same experience, is that actually my creativity is being enhanced.
It's just,
I'm actually having
it's
new
like it's
powers.
opening. It's not like it's changing it like it's a different brain. It's just like this was my lens before, and I feel like my lens is now doing this. Self-doubt is going away. Like writer's block is a thing of the past.
Writer's block is a thing of the past. It has made writer's block obsolete because you can brainstorm the simplest of idea and get a first draft. As a writer, always the hardest thing is the first draft. I want to underscore your business plan thing, because for those of you who are entrepreneurs, or especially solopreneurs, even the piece of it, you were talking about the business plan and tell who your audience is. I've done brainstorming with ChatGPT about who is my audience and what are the options. One of the things I like about collaborating with pi.ai, the personal intelligence, is that it asks questions back. It's like
Yeah.
a good coach. It not
Yeah.
only affirms like where I'm going, but then it'll go, well, John, have you considered this? That's like, I love collaborating with it. It's like I have a new friend.
It's
You know, judge
amazing.
me. Go ahead, people. I don't care. I'm having fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd like to ask you, kind of changing the subject back, like we talked about TikTok. So you got so excited about this. Well, you'll interpret for me why. But just so people know, this person, Kyle Shannon, did something that is unimaginable to me and is doing it every night. He is on TikTok live. A lot of people don't even know that there is a thing called TikTok live. And you just hang out and somehow talk about AI for 2 hours. Is that correct?
2 to 3 hours generally. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, 2 to 3 hours. People. So I guess I'll put a little more of a frame around it. When I had Anna Priz on an earlier episode of Video Mojo, she's a pretty successful TikToker. She talked about algorithm abuse because of the need she felt anyway, and I don't know if this has changed, to be posting every day in order to maintain the growth that she was seeing on TikTok. Being live every day is like going to even another level.
It
So
is,
are
although
you
I
just a
don't.
crazy person or what?
Yeah, sort of. There's a couple of things going on. When about a week after ChatGPT came out, my big epiphany with it was I asked it to write me some Python code because I heard it could code, and it did, and it looked really impressive. And then I realized I don't know how to run Python code, so I asked it, and it told me. You open terminal and you type in this command line and you do this and then you copy and paste it and it'll run. And I said, I don't want to open terminal. I don't want to do command line. Is it just a website I can copy it? And it said, sure, here's 5. And so I clicked on one and it was Replit. And I copied and pasted the code and I pushed the play button and it crashed. And I said, well, it gave me this error. And it said, well, you don't have this library installed. And I was like, how do you install that library? And it said, in the lower left-hand corner, you click on this button. In the upper right-hand corner, you search for this. You click the install button and it should run. I went back to the site, clicked, pasted, searched, and it ran. 90 minutes later, I'd written a complete, fully functional Python application that was making API calls to OpenAI. It was a social media content generator. It took 3 inputs from a person, sent this stuff to OpenAI with some prompts, and generated a bunch of social media content. I've never written a line of Python in my life, John. So when that happened, it was like this immediate time warp back to 1994 where I had a similar epiphany with the World Wide Web that, holy shit, the world just changed, but no one knows it yet. And like that phrase popped in my head. And so I kind of immediately lost my mind. I started the AI Salon that week. I started my TikTok channel that week. I initially started the TikTok channel as just an educational. I'll make videos about how to use these tools. Right? They seem to be moving pretty fast, and it seemed like that was going to be a thing. And then
You were right about that, by the way. Sorry.
yeah, yeah. But it felt really important to me to connect with other people that were enthusiastic about whatever this thing might become. They were kind of excited about the idea of it as much as the technology of it. Because back in 1994, I started a similar group called the World Wide Web Artists Consortium, which was the sort of New York City equivalent of what the AI Salon is now for web developers, right? And it was what my selfish hope was when I started that back in 1994 was, oh, I'll create a group and there'll be people will show up here that know way more than I do. And what happened was a lot of people showed up all looking for someone that knew way more than they did, right? Everybody was trying to figure it out. And there was something really amazing in that collaboration where even the smallest little insight from someone that they thought was obvious was revelatory to someone else. That's exactly where we are right now with AI. So toward the end of April, I just thought, what if I go live? So here's the confession. I love sim racing. You know what sim racing is?
You've told me, but it's car racing, kind of like a video game, but you
Yeah.
have your own steering wheel, right?
I got a rig, a steering wheel, a racing seat, and a screen, and I would race people from around the world. And I'd come home from work, and for like 2 hours a night, I would sim race. And so it just hit me at some point, what if I took the 2 hours I was using just wasting my time on that sim racing rig, because I'm not good enough to be a really good driver. I'm like middle of the pack, you know? So what if I took those 2 hours and just for the next year, just went live and did nothing but talk about AI? And so that's it. So I've basically just made a commitment for the next, until April, end of April, to do it every day, come hell or high water. And many nights I don't want to do it, but I do it. And one of the things a couple of things are interesting to me. I would have thought going live 2 to 3 hours a night, 7 nights a week for whatever it's been, 8 months now, would have, gotten me sucked up into the algorithm. But TikTok's weird. It hasn't. I've just had sort of steady growth, right? Like I've got a decent following, but if I were to write a letter to the editor of TikTok, I'm like, you got someone here who's doing this 7 nights a week. You might want to boost this, but whatever. I don't really care that much about it. It's not what it's about. But here's the thing that happened, and this is the thing that I'm really excited about. My relationship to media has completely transformed because of that channel. What I had in my head was that I would be generating content and I would build an audience, right? And I had audience kind of abstracted out as this blob of eyeballs, right? Because in advertising, that's how we've always talked about it, right? How many eyeballs do we have on this? And it's always been this disassociated group of eyeballs watching this content you're producing. And what's happened is, and it happened very, very quickly. I would do these lives, and one of my nicknames for the channel is Chat ADD, because I just ramble on, and I'll occasionally finish a sentence, and I'll occasionally get to a point that I was making. And all of a sudden, people started showing up night after night after night. Like the same people started showing up night after night after night. And at some point, they nicknamed themselves the Irregulars. I said, you guys are weird for coming up here. And I think it was Serena in the channel said, we're not weird, we're irregular. and I thought that was hilarious. So I started calling them the Irregulars. And so what those lives have turned into, John, is like a jam session where people will ask questions, or someone will say, oh, like Danielle came in the other night and said, I'm starting a business. Like, how would you use AI to help me market my business? And so I was like, oh, let's go try it. And I would just sort of flip the camera around to my computer and go into ChatGPT and start doing stuff. And it's back and forth. And now that we've got the AI Salon, we've got this web community on Mighty Networks for the AI Salon. A lot of the members of that live are also members in the salon. So what's happening is, as the live is happening, there's this real-time collaboration that's happening. Lately, the lives have been anywhere from 75 to 150 people for a 2-hour session, right? There's people just hanging out in there, collaborating. And it is, I'm getting to witness, this gets back to the impact of creativity and the impact on people. I'm getting to witness people rediscover their creativity or discover it for the first time. They're excited about whatever they're generating for the first time, sometimes in decades. And I'm getting to watch it nightly as people are, as these tools are kind of revealing things that they're passionate about, that they not only weren't in touch with, but maybe didn't think they'd ever have the chance to do. And they're loving it. And it's totally inspiring. It's just, and again, I think this is the thing it's a very subtle part of the AI that you can't, it's as evidenced by my inability to really articulate it here. It's hard to describe, but witnessing it is truly remarkable.
Yeah, so people need to witness it for themselves. And I think it also is counterintuitive that the AI is breeding this truly human community that you've developed. I mean, AI Salon is what now, I think about 1,300 members. It's free, folks. So, and Mighty Networks, by the way, is a community platform software. Well, we need to do at least 5 minutes on video before we wrap up here. I want you to talk about Storyvine and your poster behind there, but let me just provide a segue out of the community, because I went to one of the sessions on AI Salon and saw the work of a retired nurse. I believe her name is Sherry D, if I have it right.
Yeah.
And, and she's a retired nurse, but AI has ignited her creative spark, and she's doing video with no previous video experience
Yeah,
and
music
being very
videos for a
creative and
band.
doing some very fun stuff. So it's real from that point of view. One of my missions is around that kind of don't die with your creative spark still stuck inside folks, and that the creative expression breeds a kind of connection. So do your work, show your work, and you leverage the AI creativity. So tell me what you're doing business wise with video, and maybe 2 cents about where AI video is going, because there's many different pieces. And then I think we're going to have you back and maybe do a whole video mojo on video.
Great. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, one thing I'll share before I get to the video stuff. We had last AI Salon at our biweekly meeting. We had a woman, an artist named Kelly Bosch, spoke, and if you look her up on TikTok, Kelly Bosch AI Art, I think is her
Yeah, I think
handle.
it's BOESCH, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
exactly. And her work's just beautiful and remarkable. And she's a graphic designer, right? So she's got the creative thing. But someone asked her, how do you come up with these ideas? Because the ideas are really, really fascinating. And her response, this is my favorite. Like, I think this is just this encapsulates AI for me. She said, I've had these ideas in my head all my life, but I've never been able to get them out. And AI is like releasing something that she has been trying to find a way to express for her whole life. And all of a sudden, here's a tool that does it like that. And she said, it's all I can think about is like the minute I have a break at work, I I go make images. I go make, so it's this driving force. So that to me feels really, really emblematic. So
Gorgeous.
Storyvine is my company. I'm the founder and CEO of it. I'm the inventor of the tech. It's a company that's 11 and a half years old. We've got a platform that automates video storytelling, and it's funny. We don't use AI to automate the production. A lot of times, even before ChatGPT came out, people would hear what Storyvine did, and they go, "Oh, you must be using a lot of AI." And I said, "No, we're using more Aristotle than AI." So the way Storyvine works, the premise of Storyvine is that stories are the foundation of everything. And traditional video production, you go film lots and lots of content, and then a good editor sifts through that 2 or 3 hours of content to find the story, right? And they find the story and they edit out the story. What we do at Storyvine, and our patent is actually based on this, is we flip that model upside down and we say, in the ideal world, if you wanted to tell lots of the same kind of story, like let's say you wanted to say a customer testimonial or a thought leadership video or something like that, in the ideal video, what would the person be saying? Well, they would introduce themselves, and then they would, talk about, what they did before, this product, and then their experience with it, and then maybe how's life today. Okay, great. So we kind of dissect that story framework, and we create a set of prompts, and then the Storyvine app serves as a virtual director. So it's kind of like karaoke for storytelling, where someone answers a series of prompts. Their experience is, I'm just answering a series of simple questions. What they don't know is it's actually telling a little mini hero's journey, right? So we start with that. So we're capturing content in this modular way where we're only capturing the assets that we need for the final story. We then assemble those up in the cloud, mix together the graphics and things like that. So somebody answers questions in the app, goes up to the cloud. 5 minutes later, you've got a fully edited video. Our customer base is largely in healthcare and pharma. So Pfizer and Merck and Novartis are all clients. And if they want their patients or their doctors that they work with to talk about a particular product, they just download our app, choose that particular template, and, answer the questions, and they're off to the races. And then there's all sorts of asset management for approving the videos, things like that. So it's a B2B kind of offering. The AI stuff is really interesting because, I am fairly sunshiny about AI, but there's some existential crisis kind of stuff in here too that I think it's important not to gloss over. So I'm 11 years into Storyvine, and I discover this AI stuff. And I get really excited about the AI stuff. And there was a while where I was like, wait a minute, it kind of felt like I was cheating on my business. I've got Storyvine over here, I've got AI over here. I couldn't quite see how they went together. The more I learned about it, I actually sort of hit a moment of panic where I was like, oh shit, we're in trouble. Because a big part of the value proposition of Storyvine, it's right there, Auto Magic, is the automation. That you answer some questions in an app and a few minutes later you've got a fully edited video with all the graphics. And, historically that's pretty magical. It's auto magic. People love that term. They are mesmerized by, well, how does it do that, right? A year from now, John, everything's going to be automated. No one is going to, like, the value of that particular part of our platform comparatively drops to zero. So that was a moment where I was like, oh crap, how do I deal with this? And then, but I tried to look at the whole thing. I said, well, what are we really known for? Well, the other thing that Storyvine's really good at, and what we're known for, and one of our hallmarks, is that our videos tend to be very authentic, right? Because it's people self-producing. They're just answering questions off the cuff, right? So it's got, they're not trying to read a script. And I look at a year from now, we're going to live in a world of infinite content generation. And authenticity, I think, goes up in value, right? So I've got this company that's got these two major value propositions. One part of it drops to zero, but I think the other part of it goes up. So what I did was I sort of leaned into that. I said, let me lean into the authentic storytelling piece of this. Took me about a year to get my head around how to actually incorporate this without sort of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Is I've created what we call the authenticity engine. And what that is you start with an authentic narrative as the core. You upload a video or an audio. And what this system does is it analyzes it, transcribes it, and then it pulls out the key messages. It writes a title for the video, writes a description for the video. It chapterizes the video. It pulls out key messages. You can then flip over to another mode, and it generates a whole bunch of omni-channel content. It creates a blog post about the story. It creates hashtags. It creates like Instagram posts, and then it grabs pull quotes of interesting things that the person said in the video. So within about a minute of uploading a video to this thing, you now have this whole world of content that is still that same authentic story, but just expressed in completely different ways. And so for me, that idea of taking the core of what's valuable about Storyvine and amplifying that's what AI is allowing me to do within Storyvine.
And there's still going to be a human in the loop, right? I found out that's a technical term, human in the loop. So just because you can push a button and do all that content you just described, you still have to have a creative director, an editorial director, whatever you want to call him or her, to guide the ship. And yes, it might take fewer crew members, but
yep.
Anyway, it's really impressive what you're doing, Kyle, on all fronts. So is storyvine.com, is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, thanks.
And I believe that AI Salon is aisalon.mn.com. Is that right?
mn.co, mightynetworks.co, mn.co.
Okay.
aisalon.mn.co.
And on TikTok, you're the AI Learning Lab. Or is it just AI Learning Lab?
At AI Learning Lab.
Any other coordinates you want people to have?
I don't think so. Do I have anything else? Oh, if you go to Amazon, you can search for AI Futures and Anthology. That's the book.
Right, and I've enjoyed what I've read even beyond your introductory essay. There's a lot of interesting content and interesting questions, and I think you and I are going to continue to talk about this stuff because we're kind of natural collaborators as well as collaborators with AI. So Stay tuned, folks.
It's going to be good.
Thanks again for being here, Kyle. This was a great conversation and much more to come. Bottom line, people, play with it, have fun, collaborate, and the future is bright. We're not discounting the dangers. I'll throw in my 2 cents. The dangers are real. Misinformation, especially during this election year, is going to be a problem. The rights management thing, I think I'll ask one more question, Kyle, before we sign off, just because I think we should cover it. There's a lot of noise about and, legitimate concern, pushback around rights. And, literally, I don't think that AI plagiarizes. When I think about the trillions of pages that comprise this knowledge base, it's an incomprehensibly big knowledge base. Nobody's being directly copied, and it's not any different to me anyway than the human knowledge that everybody references when you create something. Do
Right.
you agree, or would you say that differently?
No, it's if you understand how the technology works, it's generating original content. It's not copying. I think one of the misconceptions is that it's copying and pasting. It's like sampling. So I think a lot of the comparisons are to the early days of hip hop when people were sampling actual pieces of songs. There, you're actually copying and pasting chunks of songs, remixing them into something. This just simply isn't doing that. It's been trained on that, so there's absolutely a gray area. I think that what we will likely see, I think where this plays out, I hope where this plays out, is that rather than trying to battle on the output side of things, copyright on the output side, that creators will be able to create their own models. So voice actors might be able to create, a voice. In fact, 11 Labs is allowing this now, where a voice actor can go in and upload 30 minutes of audio and start charging for their voice model. YouTube just announced a thing where you can generate original songs, background music for your YouTube Reels. They cut a deal with Charlie Puth and T-Pain where the songs that are created are Charlie Puth singing you a song, similar to the Sora technology. But they're paying him on the generation of it, not on the use of it, right? So I think there's a shift that has to happen where content generation is going to be infinite in everyone's hands, and you're not going to be able to chase down every copyright infringer, right? Because the tools are just going to get that good. But I think you could have original models on the input side. So imagine a set of Disney models where every time you generate a character with this model, Disney gets paid on the generation. And so I think we'll see something like that. But here's the sad truth of this is the next 20 years are going to be nothing but lawsuits. So the lawyers here are the ones that are really happy. But there's a lot of gray area here. It's not clear at all right now. And again, I just go back to, it's from where I sit, it's better to understand AI on the inside than sitting on the outside looking in, because it's really hard to get your head around what it's actually doing unless you're playing with it, which gets back to the the theme of the episode is play. Go play with this stuff.
Yeah, but it's almost like I've taught a little meditation here and there, and I talk to people about you can't know meditation until you do it. It's like if I prepared a meal for you and you didn't taste it, you wouldn't know what I cooked.
Exactly.
And it's the same thing with AI. And I really think that's a great point to end on, Kyle, is that if you're somebody who's talking about AI and thinking about AI, but not using it, you need to get your feet wet. You need to get your fingers dirty, whatever metaphor you want to use, because it's in the experience of it
Yep.
to actually know what you're talking about.
Yep.
So again, play.
That's
Thanks
it.
again, Kyle. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Jon.
Video Mojo is found at combridges.com/blog is where I archive the episodes. So COM as in Mary, BRIDGES.com/blog. And we'll be back soon with more Video Mojo. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you being here.